who is the top contender for the Democrats in the 2028 presidential race? You might be shocked to hear this. Also, the Maryland father, who turned out to be a criminal gangbanger who beats his wife, is the hill that Democrats are willing to die on now, at least for the time being. And also, Letitia James, the prosecutor in New York that prosecuted President Trump, may have committed fraud a lot of different times. New revelations in her mortgage scandal come to light. All that and more coming up on this episode of Turning Point tonight. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Together, we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. This is Turning Point tonight. Now, before we get into those discussions with our fantastic guest, the DNC is imploding, and we should celebrate because that's great. We are happy that the DNC is imploding. Now, in order to lay out why it is imploding, I think we need to recognize some actual realities. Whether or not you like the DNC, and I can imagine if you're watching this show, you don't, you do have to recognize some of the strengths that they have. Lover or hater, Nancy Pelosi has kept the Democratic Party for the last 30 years in lockstep. The one advantage that the libs in the Democratic Party have had is the fact that none of them stray the course. They all vote like sheep in a herd, and that's why they can win elections. On the Republican side, one of the greatest things about being a conservative is we have different opinions. We have different ideas of how things should be run, and we debate them, and we decide together as a collective how we should move forward. You might say that diversity is our strength. At the same time, that's not a very easy thing to deal with in actual elections. Finding a cohesion in a party that has so many different opinions and allows those opinions to be said sometimes can be very difficult. On the other side, the Democratic Party, being sheep that they are, have always been, well, it's easy to coalesce. They are losing that advantage. In a meeting in the latter part of last month, one of the new vice presidents of the DNC, a guy named David Hogg, refused to sign a pact that said, hey, we're not going to primary Democrats with Democrat money. He said, nope, absolutely not. In other words, this is a small fracture, but a telling one in the fact that Democrats, having their one advantage being cohesion, even that is breaking apart. Which, again, music to my ears and should be to yours. Here to comment on that and so much more is Adrienne Gray, host of Pop Culture on the Hill, and Gavin Wax, the chairman of the New York Young Republicans. Guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Great to be here.
Gavin, let me start with you on this one. Considering the fact that you've seen Republicans, again, it's one of the best things about us, and sometimes the more difficult things about us when it comes to elections, being all over the place in terms of how we're going to do things. Democrats have not had that problem, but it looks like they're gonna start having that problem. I don't know, what does this look like in the midterms and the next presidential?
Well, I don't know what it's going to look like because Democrats have a tendency to create many genders, and I think they're going to create as many factions to match each gender. You're going to see a pansexual faction of the party break off from the hetero-queer section of the party. It's going to be a really messy situation. I'm not going to be able to keep up with all the binary, non-binary internal disputes, but I welcome it. I think it's going to be great for our electoral process, our electoral chances going into the midterms and all the down ballot races to have a very fractured Democrat Party. As you mentioned in the open, historically, they've been able to march in lockstep, but now we're starting to see with them out of power and really leaderless and not having that great of a bench, they're starting to bust at the seams. So it looks like their new illustrious vice chairman, Mr. Hogg, has a lot on his plate. And I encourage them to continue to duke out all of their little debates internally and let the best man, woman, or Zay win.
How you got through that without cracking a smile was very impressive. Adrienne, so, the part of the reason that the Democrats have been able to stay in lockstep is because power is kind of doled out from the top. In the modern age, and I'm sure you're aware of this in the pop culture world, you can create your own power. AOC has done it, David Hogg has done it, and that actually it makes it more difficult for people to remain in that lockstep. What kind of influence on the Democratic Party do these kind of newer members who already have platforms have, and do you think that they're going to be able to kind of continue, falling in line, or are they going to go all over the place, which hopefully inevitably means conservatives win more?
Yeah, this is crazy. This party is so at odds with each other. It's crazy. The DNC isn't just fractured, it's giving group project energy, but no one is doing the work. And when David Hogg won't pledge allegiance to the woke flag anymore, you're in trouble. You know, your star recruits that are activists who won't pledge loyalty, the ship isn't sinking, it's in full mutiny. So the DNC is now a circus without a ringleader, and like I said, it's a nightmare. So I'm curious to see what happens here.
Yeah, it's hard to not smile at the chaos that's going on in the DNC. And speaking of chaos in the DNC, Nate Silver, one of your bigger pollsters, it came out over the weekend or the last couple days and said, the person that I think has the best chance of winning the DNC nominee for president in 2028, if she chooses to run, is none other than AOC. Now, that might be shocking to a lot of people because AOC has often been so far outside of the political mainstream, even in her own lefty side, that it's unfathomable to think. But a Yale University poll found that AOC had the highest net favorability ratings among Democrats at 60 points. And the same poll said she was in second place in a hypothetical 2028 DNC runoff, second only to Kamala Harris. Gavin, are we excited about this? Is this a good thing? Or do we have something to worry about, considering the fact that her and Bernie right now are pulling some pretty big crowds, and I don't think it's necessarily in our best interest to completely ignore that.
Well, listen, I don't have a lot of respect for Nate Silver. I think his predictions in the past and his polling have kind of taken a nosedive. I think they need to downgrade him either to Nate Bronze or Nate Copper or maybe Nate Lead. I'm not sure, whatever metal is cheaper this day and age. But in reality, I do believe him on this. I do think AOC is their best contender in terms of the primary for the Democrats. I think she's going to come in there with a lot of vigor, with a lot of support behind her. She's going to rally the left-wing base, and I think that's what she needs to get through a Democrat Party primary. I mean, we have to see how the party insiders and the party bosses are going to take that. They've obviously rigged it in the past against Bernie and others, and they certainly rigged it to consolidate around Joe Biden back in 2020. So this is a party named after democracy, but doesn't actually practice what they preach, at least as it comes to their internal party mechanism. But let's see. I think she's probably their leading contender. I do believe that, and all the power to them. Again, I hope they continue to fight internally, and I hope they nominate AOC. I think it's going to be a disaster for them down ballot, and I think she represents, like you said, the fringe of the party, not the electable portion of the party, at least not nationally.
Yeah, Adrienne, so this is interesting too, because I think everybody knows in primaries, you kind of run to your side. The constituents that show up in primaries are the hardcore voters that really love all the super lefty progressive stuff. And then after the primary, it is a race to the middle. Who can be the most moderate? Considering how far left AOC has gotten, let's just say, hypothetically, she gets the nomination in 2028. Do we think she has the possibility to go back to the middle and kind of appeal to those moderate Democrats? Or is she too far off course at this point to have any sort of redemption?
Yeah, I think not. She's not moderate whatsoever. I think she's scary, but also a great competition for us. The way she ran Amazon out of New York is how she's going to run the the moderate Democrat out of her area. This to me is a mistake. It's a nightmare. I don't see this happening. It'll never happen. So I have no confidence in this whatsoever.
That's a good point. I forgot Amazon came into New York City and said, we're going to provide thousands of jobs. And AOC said, no, not on my watch. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Not sure if that was.
She has a degree in economics, and she still thinks that money grows on taxed billionaires. So, I mean,
yeah, that goes to show you what a degree in economics actually is worth. Speaking of people who may not be worth much nowadays, is Dr. Fauci. His stock has fallen substantially, and I hate to continue battering a ram that is far past, but the Wall Street Journal came out with an opinion piece say, you know what, it is time to actually hold Dr. Fauci accountable. Now, for those of you watching, I'm sure there's many reasons why we don't like Dr. Fauci. A lot of those, though, if we're being fair and we're being honest here, were subjective opinions. He may have wanted to crunch down a little bit more, a lot more than all of us did. But at the same time, it's hard to, hold people accountable for their thoughts and ideas in the moment. What you can, though, and what the Wall Street Journal is making the case here, is you can hold him accountable for the lying. And that is what I think a lot of people might want to see. Dr. Fauci misled Congress multiple different times about not funding the laboratories in Wuhan with NIH money. And that is, I think, what the Wall Street Journal is making the case of. That's why we need to hold him accountable. Gavin, is this something that is politically advantageous to hold Dr. Fauci accountable or prosecute him in any way, shape, or form for lying to Congress, or at least that's what we think?
I mean, look, I think the consequences of Dr. Fauci's actions as they related to the reverse gain of function, they need to be addressed. We need to create some sort of repercussions for what he did, what he engaged in. I think it goes beyond just his opinions here. I think he actually engaged in malice, and the type of research that we were funding led to that pandemic and killed many people. It destroyed civil society. So we certainly can't let him get off the hook. And I don't know what his defense is going to be. He may take the Cuomo approach and claim he's just Italian and everything is okay. I don't know, but I think we definitely need to use RICO charges if we need to go after him, like we went after the mob. He represents a new type of mob. We need to take him down. I think the deep state medical sort of cabal that he has been running for the better part of a few decades really needs to face some accountability for once. And I think Dr. Fauci should be at the top of that list for those to be prosecuted.
Yeah, Adrienne, in the last couple 30 seconds, do you think this is a feasible feat? Feasible feat, good word in there. A feasible feat for us?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, his version of science involved more flip-flops than a Florida spring break boardwalk. Okay, he masked the truth better than he masked himself, and he needs to be held accountable.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see if anything comes of that, because I think the evidence is overwhelming. Just ask Rand Paul. I'm sure he has some thoughts. Let's see. Adrienne, Gavin will be right back after the break to discuss, well, the attorney general that prosecuted President Trump may have committed fraud, or at least that's what it looks like. And we'll check in with Turning Point White House correspondent Monica Page after the break. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.